Good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to Money Matters. I'm Chris Hensley. We have a fantastic show lined up for you today. I am super excited to have Bob Berg back on the show. You've heard me talk about the 10-year anniversary of the show. I looked back and, we don't often have what I call alumni members on the show, people who are repeat guests after we're now on episode 302, and they've got to be really, really good guests to come back on the show. Bob was kind enough to visit with us again from the first episode back on episode 28, where we had Why Can't We Be Friends? Adversaries into Allies. And we talked about his book, Go Giver. Now, Bob, I'm a big fan. So if you can't tell already,
Thank
what I'm going to do is I'm going to share your bio with listeners just so that they can get to know you a little bit better. Bob has is for over 30 years. He's been successful showing entrepreneurs, leaders, and sales professionals how to communicate their value and accelerate their business growth. Although for years he is best known for his sales classic, Endless Referrals, and yes, I had that one back in the day too. Endless Referrals. It's his business parable, The Go Giver, co-authored with John David Mann, that has created a worldwide movement. So I'll just stop there because you've got a lot of stuff there. Bob, what else can you share with us so that the listeners can get to know you a little bit better?
there's nothing really to share. Just kind of enjoy my work and enjoy speaking with great people like you. And it's always fun to have these conversations.
I love it. I love it. And I did know I've been keeping up with you, and you're doing the Go Giver podcast as well. So that's something that's evolved since, I guess, the last 10 years here.
Actually, I used to do it. We haven't had it active for a while. I still keep the episodes in the archives though, and it seems like people are listening to more to the archives than they did to the live ones. So that's worked out
It,
well.
it is good information. I mean, it is really
Thank
good
you.
information. When we talked before, this was pre-COVID, right? So people
Oh,
were out
long before
shaking
that.
hands and networking and meeting, and so now we're in a different world. But a lot of the stuff that you talked about in Go Giver still holds true.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
could you share with listeners what the premise of the book, The Go Giver, is?
Sure. Basically, it's that shifting, and it's a parable, so it's a story co-authored with John David Mann, who is a fantastic writer. Really, he was the lead writer, storyteller, and it's really the premise is that shifting your focus, which is really where it all begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving, and when we say giving in this context we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others. Understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, a more fulfilling way, it's actually the most financially profitable way as well. And not for any kind of way out there, mystical, magical, kind of woo woo reasons or anything. It really makes logical sense. When you're that person, Chris, who can move your focus off of yourself and place it on serving others, discovering their needs, their wants, their desires. When moving off of yourself and making it about helping them solve their problems and challenges. When taking your focus off yourself and being focused on moving them closer to happiness, people feel good about you. They feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. They want to tell the world about you. They want to be what we call your personal walking ambassador. So that's really what the story is about. And then there are five principles or laws that John and I shared, that would help someone to take that premise and make it actionable.
So that's a good leeway. I'm gonna ask you about those five laws here in a second, but I'm gonna take a
Sure.
pause just for a moment and let you know that 10 years ago when you were on the show, shortly after being on the show, I got a handwritten thank you card from you. that was signed. Thanks for being on the show. The reason I mention that is this is one of those lost, dying arts, right? People do not handwrite thank you cards anymore. And if you're on a job interview, following up with a handwritten thank you card, that's a huge thing.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
I just wanted to let you know that that made a big impact. And I
Thank
don't
you.
have any other people in the last 10 years after show 302 that I could say wrote a handwritten thank you. So that made you stand out. Okay, I digress.
I
Let's get
appreciate
back to it. Yeah, so we were talking about the five laws. Can you share what those are for listeners?
it. Sure. So the five laws themselves are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. Law number one, the law of value, says that your true worth, in the business sense, of course, your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Now, when you first hear this, it can sound rather counterintuitive. Give more in value than I take in payment. That sounds all nicey nice and everything, but it also kind of sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy, right? Give more in value than I take in payment. So we simply have to understand here the difference between price and value. Price is a dollar figure, it's a dollar amount, it's finite, it is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another person that they will willingly exchange their, whether time, energy, or money, in exchange for this worth, while you also make a very healthy profit. A very quick example, if I may, would be if you were to hire an accountant, let's say, to do your taxes, and she charged you $1,000 as her fee, or literally her price, $1,000. But what value did she give you in exchange for that? Well, through her hard work, her discipline, her years of study, her knowledge, and her desire to get to know you and your business and what you're looking to accomplish, she was able to save you $5,000 in taxes. She also saved you countless hours of time, which freed you up to do what you would rather be doing and what you could be more productively doing. She also gave you the security and the peace of mind for you and your family, knowing it was done correctly. So she literally gave you well over $5,000 in value in exchange for $1,000 fee or price. So you feel great about it. She also made a very healthy profit, because to her it was worth it to exchange her time, her knowledge, her energy for this $1,000 fee. So, one of my old heroes, Harry Brown, used to say, in any free market based exchange, and when we say free market, we simply mean no one is forced to do business with anyone else. So, in any free market based exchange, there should always be at least two profits: the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them came away better off afterwards than they were beforehand. But it's important to understand that this happened only because the accountant, she was focused not on the fee, she was focused on the immense value she was providing. The fee was the result. This is why John David Mann and I say that money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, meaning nothing more than the value must be the focus. The money you receive is simply a natural result of the value you've provided. So that's really, in a nutshell, that's law number one, the law of value. Uh, Law number two, and I'll be real quick with the others. Law number two is the law of compensation. It says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So it's not just a matter of providing great value. That's of course the bedrock. That's the foundation. But it's also how many lives you impact with the value you provide. Law number three, the law of influence, says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. No, not in a way that's doormatty or martyrish or self sacrificial. Absolutely not at all. It's simply, as Joe, the protege in the story, learned from several of the mentors, the golden rule of business, of sales, says that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you and others than by moving from that I focus or me focus to that other focus, looking to, as Sam, one of the mentors in the story, advised Joe, make your win all about the other person's win. Law number 4, the law of authenticity, says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. In this part of the story, Deborah shared a very important lesson, and that is that all the skills in the world, the sales skills, excuse me, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are all very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true authentic core. But when you do, when you show up as yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, people not only feel good about you, they feel comfortable with you, they feel safe with you because they know who they're getting. And it's human nature to want to make sense of our world, and this in a world that often doesn't make sense. So that kind of consistency in yourself in a world that's very inconsistent is a big progenitor of trust. I think the big thing is, in a sense, and maybe it's through social media, the that authenticity's almost been redefined to mean no boundaries. Just do or say whatever you want or whatever you think because, well, it's authentic, so it doesn't matter. It's okay. And I respectfully disagree with that. This is sort of like the person who says, well, I have anger issues and I yell at people a lot. And if I were to act any differently, that wouldn't be authentic of me. And that's malarkey. That simply means that person has an authentic problem that they need to authentically work on in order to become a better, higher, more effective, authentic version of themselves. So I kind of politely again reject that premise about authenticity, and I would rather define it as simply acting congruently with your values. And I think if you do that, then you're being authentic and you're always on the right track. Law number 5, the law of receptivity, says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. And this really means just understanding that, yeah, you breathe out, you also have to breathe in. It's not one or the other, it's both. You breathe out carbon dioxide, you breathe in oxygen. You breathe out, which is giving, you breathe in, which is receiving. Despite the messages of lack, the very anti-prosperity messages we get from the world around us, from just about everywhere. Fact is, giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. Again, it's not an either or, it's an and. Giving and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. So we need to be able to get past all those horrible mind viruses, as my great friend Randy Gage calls them, and understand that providing the fact that you are giving great value to the world, you're touching the lives of many, and you've earned that abundance, it is yours to gratefully receive. And we've got to be careful not to let those kind of horrible anti-prosperity messages get in the way and keep us from doing that.
It is a two-way street, right? It's got to flow both ways. But the
Exactly.
five laws that you just shared with us, I mean, those are so huge. Each one of those, we could do a whole show just on each one of them.
Exactly.
Uh,
that
I would
was the Reader's
encourage
Digest version.
exactly. I would encourage people to read this book. It is a powerful book. Um,
Thank you.
let me pivot a little bit and ask you about a piece of advice. Was there one piece of advice that you received before you even knew anything about what being a go-giver entailed that was a difference maker for you?
Well, I think about almost 40 years ago, I had been in sales for a couple of years, um, and I had done pretty well because I had learned how to sell, but I didn't know anything about selling when I first started, and I failed miserably. But once I read a couple of books, Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, I started studying sales. I did started to do really well. But I went to work for another company a couple of years after I started, and I started out in a slump and was really having a difficult time working out of it. And I made the mistake of the young salesperson. The deeper the slump I was in, the more I was focused on myself as opposed to being focused on my customers. And I remember an older guy at the company where I was. He wasn't in the sales department. I think he was an engineer or something, and he retired soon after. I didn't know him very well, but nice guy. And one of these people didn't say a whole lot, but whenever he did, it was usually something profound.
Listen
And
up.
yeah, exactly. And he took me aside one day and he just said, Berg, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as the target. Your target is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, he said, you'll get a reward, and that reward will be in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, he said, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It isn't the target itself. Your target is serving others. And, Chris, what that really said to me, I think, was that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Great salesmanship is never about the product or service itself, as important as those are. That's not what it's about. Great salesmanship is really all about the other person. It's about that person whose life you're trying to add value to. Or I think we could even really say it's about that person whose life is better just because you are part of it. And I think that when we approach sales from that foundation, now we are really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
I love it. I love it. Great, great information there. One of the lines that raised a few eyebrows in the book, it's where you and John wrote, "Does it make money?" Uh, it's not a bad question. It's a great question. It's just a bad first question.
Yeah.
I think of a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when in startup phase, might
Mm,
disagree with you. They might
yeah.
even say that it's the only question when it comes to business. Otherwise, you're just no naive. So, what do you two mean by that? So, that's a long one. What do you mean by that?
Sure. No, no, that's a good question. When I used to speak at sales conferences, I'm not even on the road anymore. At 65, I'm kind of off the road. I'm still doing actually some conferences by computer virtually, but not on the road. But when I used to, and I'd be in
Right,
front of the huge groups of sales professionals, one of the first things I would say is nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. Okay. Nobody's going to buy from you because you'd like the sale, you need the money, or even just because you're a nice person. Right? They're going to buy from you because they believe that they will ultimately be better off by doing so than by not doing so. So the entrepreneur who comes into the game thinking, only about the money, again, it's not that it's not an important question, but if they have that first, they're putting the cart before the horse, because nobody's buying because they care if it makes money. First, the first question to ask is, does it serve? I mean, we can even say, is there a market for it? Either one that's already there or one you're willing to take a chance and try to create. I mean, that's a different. But the key is you've got to start with the customer. You've got to start with, is it something people are going to want and pay for? Okay. Now, if the answer is yes, does it serve? Yes, it serves. Now you've got to ask, does it make money? Because you can have millions of buyers, but if you're not making a profit on each sale, you have a very expensive hobby. So, no, asking if it will make money is indeed an important question. It's just a really bad first question because it starts you off facing in the wrong direction.
that makes perfect sense to me. That is something we should, intuitively know. I mean, when we go purchase something and we're in that on the other side of that transaction, right? We don't like
Hmm.
it. You can smell it when people are
Of
kind of,
course.
focused on the numbers instead of really caring. So that's awesome. Um,
Thank you.
I'll just pivot just a little bit to talk about mentorship because that's an important thing. We've all had people that have influenced our lives, whether we put the label mentor on them or just called them something
Sure.
else, the guy who knew a little bit more than me at the office. Um,
Mhm.
where, for people who are looking for mentors, where's a good place to find your first mentor?
Well, I think that you can find a mentor anywhere. It could be that person at work. It could be that person who gave me that advice, even though I didn't go looking for him. He came to me, and that was wonderful. But yeah, it could be someone you admire at work. It could be someone you admire in the community. It could be someone who you're related to knows and can introduce you. It could be someone you find online. I think the big thing is how we approach that person, because whether it's in person, whether it's by phone, whether it's on social media, whatever. I think one of the big mistakes people make is they'll say to somebody, I really need help. I need a mentor. Will you mentor me? And if you don't have a relationship with this person first, it's sort of like, saying to someone, hey, will you share with me 40 years of your experience, even though you don't know me from a hole in the wall? And not only might it come across as inappropriate or entitled, but that person probably has a lot of other people asking for their time and mentorship, and just coming right out and asking them to mentor you doesn't distinguish you in any way. Nonetheless, you can still approach that person. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I would probably do it in a way that is more effective, and that is by simply saying to this person something like, I know you are very busy, so if this is something you either don't have the time to do or for whatever reason would rather not, I'll absolutely understand. I'm wondering if I could possibly ask you one or two very specific questions.
I
Now
love
what you've done, you've totally reframed this, okay? And now it's you've shown respect in the ask. You've communicated. You realize this is a big ask. You gave them what I call the out or back door, that emotional escape route, by saying, I understand you're very busy. If you'd rather not, I'll totally understand. And the bigger the out you give someone to take, the less they'll feel the need to take it, because not only do people crave autonomy and to not feel forced into doing something, but it also communicates to them that you respect their time, right? But the third thing you did, which is very important, is rather than just asking them to mentor you, again, without a relationship, it's like asking someone to marry you before asking for a date. A
right.
mentor protege relationship is a relationship. It takes time to develop. But what you did instead is you asked, may I ask you one or two very specific questions? What you've just communicated there is to this person, okay, they're not going to waste my time. They know what they want. They have an agenda, in a good way, an agenda. They have an agenda, right? And they'll usually say, sure, absolutely, go ahead. What would you, whatever. Now, you want to make sure you've researched this person so thoroughly that you don't ask them a question that you could have found online, of course. But you also want to ask those questions, make it quick, don't take a lot of their time. Thank them profusely. Let them know that you're going to apply the information right away. May I touch base with you from time to time to let you know how things go? They're going to say, yes, of course, absolutely. Now, the next thing I would do is I would write a handwritten personalized thank you note, like we talked about before.
Oh,
Mine
I
is
love
on a
that.
8.5 by 3 inch note card with a certain information. People can, if they go to burg.com/note card, they can see how mine, and they can use that as a prototype if they want, and just put their own information on there. But and it should just say something very simple like, dear Mr. So and so, or dear Ms. So and so, or hi Jack, or hi Jill, however the relationship's been established. Thank you. I'm so very grateful for you taking time out of your busy schedule to answer my questions. Just priceless. Look forward to applying your information, and we'll touch base and let you know how things are going. Best regard, whatever. Okay, however you want to do it, put it in number 10 envelope, or however you're doing it, hand stamp it, send it. Um, Now, the next thing I would do is make a small donation. It doesn't have to be anything big, but a small donation to their favorite charitable cause, or whatever it is that they're real, which you can find by looking up online, or at worst you can ask their administrative assistant. It might be that they serve on the board of directors of their local animal shelter, or adoption club, whatever it happens to be. Make a small donation in their name. It'll get back to them, and you're not doing it to kiss up or anything, but again, just so they know that you
Right.
really respect and honor and appreciate the fact that they took and you wanted to do something to be able to right. And this is the kind, now you can, a few weeks later, maybe you'll reconnect with them and ask them another question, and it maybe, and time, perhaps a mentor protege relationship develops. Maybe not. It might be that one time you talk to that person, or it might be more. But if you do this with the people who you want to meet, what you're going to find is you're creating this group of people who are really there for you and who want to see you succeed, and can introduce you to others and can share their wisdom. And I think when you go about it that way, you're on the right track.
Fantastic. That is great. I tell you, 10 years later, I still remember the handwritten note that you sent me. It works, right? That
Thank
left
you.
an impact there.
I
We are
appreciate
we're bumping towards the end of the show. We could sit and talk all day. We've got just a couple minutes left here, so let me pick one good one here. Hopefully, it won't. Let's see. Uh, so the one I wanted to ask you is you make an interesting point that I think we should spend some time on. So maybe
Sure.
we'll spend a little bit of time since we're bumping towards the end. You say that go-giver philosophy is totally congruent with human nature.
Yeah.
Well, that could be looked at it many ways. Not all of them are positive. Could you explain on that?
Well, I mean, when I say congruent with human nature, I mean it's understanding that, and Dale Carnegie talked about this in his classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People. In fact, I think this was the underlying premise of his entire book, this one line. It's where he said, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. So, to the degree that we can focus on that other person and ask ourselves how we provide or give value to them. Now, remember when we talked about value earlier, it's the relative worth or desirability, which means value is always in the eyes of the beholder. It's not what we think is of value or what we think they should think is of value. It's what they think. So our job is to discover that. And when we
Love it.
do, now we're able to add value in a way that they embrace. That's really what I talk about, human nature. That's what it is. And it's with any relationship.
Love it. I love it. We're right here at the end of the show. Bob, for listeners who'd like to find out more about you, where is the best place for them to find you?
The easiest way is just to go to burg.com, and they can, if they'd like, subscribe to my daily impact emails. I send those out Monday through Friday, and just really enjoy doing that and love the feedback from people who read those. So, yeah, that would be really neat.
Absolutely. We'll put that on the podcast notes. So if you're driving and listening to this, just know that it'll be there on the podcast. Bob, once again, thank you for coming back on the show. You are one of the few people that we've asked to come back, and have a
Uh,
good rest of the day there.
well, it's an honor to know that. I appreciate that so much. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Have a good one.